Hi everyone, my name's Andrew and welcome to another video. Today we're going to talk about Parcel. This is one of the products we have at Oasis. It's a very cool SDK that you can integrate into your product to do all sorts of fun things to protect user privacy, their data, et cetera, et cetera. I'm joined today by Charlie. He's one of the PMs at Oasis Labs, and he's going to provide us an overview of what Parcel is, show you kind of a demo of some fake mock products that we've built, and then we'll provide some information about how you can get started building with Parcel yourself. So Charlie, maybe you could provide a brief overview of kind of what is Parcel, like why did we build it, and what are the kind of values for developers?
Cool. Yeah. So Parcel is one of our main tools here at Oasis Labs. Parcel is a set of privacy-first data governance APIs. It's designed to give customers great control and oversight of how their data is being used, while also at the same time letting developers continue to build great and interesting and valuable products and applications. So what it does is Parcel allows developers to securely store sensitive user data, define different usage policies over that sensitive data, share tamper-proof logs with their end users of how their data is being consumed, and then easily deploy different computations and algorithms inside what we call secure computing environments, secure enclaves, so that they can do privacy-preserving analysis and generate new data and new insights for their end users. So Parcel, putting all that together, that makes it Parcel makes it really easy for developers to offer their end users great ways to manage their data. We also
Mm-hmm.
have a web UI called Steward App, which allows end users to go in and see in one place the applications that they've granted permission to, the different pieces of data that the applications have accessed on their behalf, manage permissions at any time, see a full access history of how their data is being used by these different apps.
Yeah.
And what's really exciting about Parcel is that it allows businesses, like I said, to give their users great control over their data and tackle, one of the most, I would say, challenging issues of our time in building products today, of providing strong privacy guarantees, while also still at the same time being able to build great services, not necessarily compromising on the utility of their products.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a really challenging trade-off. I think a lot of times we think that, in order to make things easier to use or in order to provide the utility that we want to provide to our customers, that we'll have to sacrifice on privacy or that they have to at least trust us to protect their privacy. And what's really exciting about Parcel is we can kind of remove that trade-off in a lot of ways, and we can give customers much stronger privacy guarantees that are programmatic and really defined and set, by the code, by the technology itself. Yeah, one really cool use case that I'm excited about is Oasis Labs has partnered with Nebula Genomics. They're kind of like 23andMe, these like direct-to-consumer genome sequencing companies. But what's different about Nebula is they're really focusing on privacy, and so they've used Parcel to give their customers complete ownership and control of that genome data. So they can manage how it's used. They can log into the Steward app, like you mentioned, and kind of agree to certain usage policies that then Nebula has to adhere to if they want to analyze their data. And Nebula is a fantastic company that is very privacy focused, but with Parcel, their customers get the strongest guarantees that Nebula is not going to go sell that really valuable data to a pharmaceutical company or to to other healthcare companies, which is something we've seen other genome sequencing companies do. So yeah, anyway, you guys can visit our blog and read about that use case. It's a really cool one. But let's dive into Parcel, kind of look at some demos and kind of learn more about how to use this SDK. So Charlie, what are we gonna see today in this demo?
Yeah, I'm super excited about Nebula also. Our demo today won't quite be as cool as privacy first genome sequencing, but
Come
hopefully
on.
it'll be a really great way. Hopefully it'll be a really great way for developers to get a sense of all the different building blocks of Parcel and hit the ground running, understand how to use it and all the cool things that they want to build. So what we're going to do to show that is we're going to use an example app that we call BlockCred. And so BlockCred imagines how you can do credit scoring based on financial data in a way that, like we said, is privacy preserving. So the BlockCred app will have sort of three main parts. We'll have a mock UI for the app that'll allow users to sign up for BlockCred and then link their BlockCred accounts to their Oasis Steward accounts so that they can manage all their data. The second part of the example will then have us as developers uploading this financial data on behalf of these users. And then the third part is we'll actually run a computation to generate this mock credit score through these secure environments in a privacy preserving way.
Super cool. Yeah. Awesome. Yeah. Okay, cool. Let's get started with account linking. Maybe Charlie, you can pull up your screen and we can dive into that.
On the top left, we're going to have what our end users will see when they go to use our awesome BlockCred app. On the bottom left here, I've got, of course, my terminal, and on the right side, I've got my code. So like I said, part one here is account linking. So we're in the phase of the journey here for our customers of BlockCred where they've created their BlockCred accounts, they're excited to get started, and they now need to link their accounts to Oasis. So we've got a simple server going here. We've hit the screen in the BlockCred app that says, hey, look, we take data privacy really seriously. We want you to create Oasis steward accounts so that you can be full owners of your data and see transparently everything that us, BlockCred, is doing with your data.
And obviously,
So,
this would be like, you could design this or build it however you wanted it to be, right? I mean, this is this front end, like in Nebula's use case, this is their kind of existing flow that they already have for sequencing genomes, and they've integrated Parcel into that.
Yeah, so I am not the world's best UI artist here, so this is pretty simple. But yeah, you'd imagine this looks like whatever you want your application to look like, and it lives within your onboarding screens, or like perhaps in an account setting screens for users that have already signed up for your app. And so what users will do here is they'll click Get Started with Oasis, and that'll dump them off to our app. And so how this works behind the scenes is if we switch over to the right side here, we've got the obviously HTML code behind that landing page. And then if we zoom in here on the last set of lines here, this is really where the magic happens. We're kicking off what's called an account linking flow. And so account linking at Oasis is built on top of OAuth 2 and leveraging the OpenID Connect standard, which is like a simple way to exchange identity information leveraging OAuth 2. So we use an open source library for it. There's plenty. The one we use is up here. You can see it in our public repo of this full example. There's plenty of great OAuth 2 libraries that you can use. And it happens in two main parts. So the first part here is we create what's called the sign-in request, and that kicks off the first step of the OAuth 2 OpenID Connect flow here. And behind the scenes here, if we dig a little bit deeper into the JS code, you'll see the actual configs that we're using. And again, this is all in our repo and in our documentation, so it's don't worry too much about the specifics. But this uses our auth server here. It kicks off what we call the code response type with the scope OpenID. Uses our client ID that we've registered in the Oasis Parcel developer portal, and then passes in a redirect URL for our local server here.
Got it.
And what's key here really is, I would say, the OpenID scope, and that's basically saying to Oasis, hey, my application wants access to users' identity address. And so identity address is a fancy Oasis way of saying a user ID or a user identifier for users in our system, so that you as a developer can link your users in your system to users in our system.
Got it.
So we've kicked off the first part of the flow here. And so on the left side, let's switch back here. We'll click share. And you see here, like I said, this generates, based on that scope, it says BlockCred wants access to your Oasis identity address. And so I'm signing up for BlockCred. I think this is awesome. So I'm going to click share and continue. This redirects back to the BlockCred app, and we hop over here to the callback URL where we process this. And so it happens in two stages. We get back first an access token, and then we exchange that access token for the access code. We exchange the access code for the final ID token. It's the ID token that'll then contain that user identity address that I talked about. So again, we use the OIDC client here to help us process, manages a lot of the heavy lifting behind the scenes with OAuth 2. We pull out the ID token, we decode it. It's going to be in a JWT, and then we get back here the ID token. And that's, like I said, it's an identifier for the user. We highly recommend that developers save that to wherever they're keeping track of information about their users, so that they can then later on upload data on their behalf, pull data back on their behalf, run computations, and know who might be able to map users in their system to users in our system.
Got it.
And then the last part here of the account linking flow is, once you've got the ID address back together and you've linked the accounts, is you can then send your users off to our consent or permission screen to then ask for more detailed permissions. And this is where developers specify exactly what their application is going to be doing with different pieces of user data, and give users that ability, that power to say, I'm allowing this, I understand how my data is being used, and it's okay with me. So submitting their permissions. So here we see that, Acme Co, in order to power the BlockCred app, wants to be able to analyze my bank statements in order to measure my creditworthiness. If I click yes, here I can see the consequences of what that means. I'll get back, of course, credit score. And then if I say no, I know I won't be able to get a credit score. So this sounds great. I want to be able to use this app. So I'll say yes, and I'll hit confirm.
Yeah, what I really like about this, like beyond just the kind of like programmatic guarantees that we're providing underneath the hood, you also can provide some really nice, like clean language to explain to the user what you're doing. You don't necessarily have to hide. Of course, you could like also link to some legalese or something like that. But this is a really nice format to make some kind of condensed, abbreviated permission structure that your users can then use.
Totally.
And so they can understand how you're using your data. Yeah.
Exactly, and that's what we think is so great about Parcel, is it makes it really easy for developers to be that clear and transparent with their users, with hopefully not a lot of work.
Yeah, exactly.
Click here, hit finish onboarding. It takes us back to the Blockcard app, and then we see here, just for completeness, that we have been able to link our user account. So this is what we call the Oasis identity address, or an Oasis user identifier here, that the Blockcard app then gets back on my behalf. That's important because we're then going to use that in the next 2 steps of our demo here. So step number 2 of the demo, like I talked about, is being able to upload data on behalf of users. And so the piece of data that we'll upload, I'll pull it up here so you guys can see, is bank data, financial data that we'll use to run the credit score. So using a very simplified example here, we've got an array of balance values over time. So these are the different, these are the values in this user's bank account over the last few days. We have it hard coded here. We're going to upload it from the command line, but you can imagine that in practice, you might perhaps be pulling this from a different API. Perhaps you've integrated with Plaid to pull it from their bank account, or you're integrated directly with a financial institution's APIs. And then this is all happening, in reality, probably in a Lambda or Google Cloud Function, or in, an Express server that you're running. And you're pulling in the Oasis SDK on the fly as you're pulling this data to then store it back to Oasis. So what do we do with this? We upload it. So it should be pretty simple. Like I said, we want to make this really easy for developers to be great stewards of their users' data. So if we hop over here, we're going to pull in order to do that, we're going to use the Parcel SDK. So it's a bunch of APIs and wrappers that we've created in TypeScript to, again, make it really easy and abstract away a lot of the complexity of working with our network and our products, so developers can build great apps really easily. So it should be really as simple as we pull in the SDK, we use our developer credentials, which is a client ID and key pair that you register in the portal, in our developer portal, and then we build out the actual data set. So we give it a title, we give it some metadata so we're able to find it later. And then we read in the actual data. So we'll read it in from that file, we'll pass in that metadata, and we'll say here, and I think this is the key line to call out, is that this piece of data belongs to our end user. So we're going to use that identity address that we got from part 1, and we're going to say this data set of bank records belongs to this user, and we're going to mark ourselves as the application, as the developer, as the creator of this. That then creates the relationship there, saying the Blockcard app and this user are collaborating over this piece of data. And if it succeeds, we should see back, I'm going to kick it off over here. We should see back in the terminal a address for the data set. And I'll explain in just a second what that means. So let me start this off here. I'll kick off the upload script. Oops. I'm going to make sure I copy in the user identity. I'm going to copy it here, but you'd imagine you could also pull it in programmatically as you've completed user linking. And I'm going to start uploading the data set. And like I said, if this succeeds, you'll get back what we call an address for the data set. So we have an address for our user, and we have an address for our data set. And this represents where on our blockchain these different entities live.
Yeah.
And so we see it succeeded. That was super quick. That's awesome. And so now we have here this address for the data set.
And so how do I know, maybe a silly question, but how do I know that the policies that the user opted into are applied to that data set? Like what's the relationship between those policies, the user, and the data sets themselves?
Yeah, it's a great question. So as the user's coming in here and they're seeing these permissions and they say yes or no, what we're doing behind the scenes for developers is we're managing a set of what we call policies to say that this developer is allowed to access these pieces of data that belong to these users.
Mm-hmm.
And we do that all to abstract away a lot of the complexity. And there's several different ways that you can verify that you have permission. You can just try and going as a developer and trying to access the data set. And if you have permission, it'll succeed. And if it doesn't, it'll throw you an error. So you can sort of just like leave the policy management to us and just use it as is, and it'll work and not work automatically based on the user's preferences. You can also use some of our APIs and our command line tools to go, if you're curious or like it's important to the logic of your app, you can actually go and look at a data set, look at the policy on the data set, look at the state of those policies, see which different entities the policies facilitate relationships with. So you can see, programmatically or in your command line or on the fly, see the different states of different data sets and whatnot. You can also, if it's easier, you can go into our developer facing UI and see all the different data sets that have been granted your app permission.
Got it. Very cool.
Cool. So we've granted permission. I'm back here in the Steward app as the end user, so we can see that the actual data set has uploaded successfully. We can double check and make sure it looks like what we expect. So I'm here, like I said, in the app as the end user. I've hit download on the data set. And if I take a peek at it, we'll see the data, and that matches what we had, over in the code, what we thought we were uploading. So now we know the data is uploaded. It's on the chain. We've got these access policies, again, mediated through the chain with an immutable ledger so that we know exactly what's happening. Nothing, you can't muck with anything, can't do any funny business.
No funny business. I like it.
So the last bit of the demo here, rounded out, is the exciting part. We're going to actually generate the credit score. So we're going to take in this data set as an input. We're going to run a simple algorithm and decide, what's credit score to apply to this user. Like I said, it's all going to happen in our secure computing environment, which is, encrypts the data, stays encrypted within you. It's memory that stays encrypted within use, so that we as a developer never actually see or take ownership of the end user data, completely respecting, their privacy, but are still able to, run algorithms and generate valuable information.
Yeah. What's neat about this, is basically you can have an end-to-end flow where, I can build an app and my system never sees or really even touches the raw data. I'm loading it into an encrypted computer, a secure computing environment. I'm pulling it in from, Plaid or some other API and just piping it directly into the Oasis system. So I'm building a whole system where I have all the benefits of being able to use this data, but never have to have the risk necessarily of storing it in my own system.
Totally. And hopefully it's really easy to do, right? Like it was a couple lines of code, upload it, and now I'm going to show you a couple lines of code here to actually run the algorithm. So really powerful, but still really accessible and easy to use. So we're going to run the report, again, pull in the SDK here. We're going to use the user identity address and now also the address of that data set that we uploaded. And the way this works is we have a program, and this program here is going to be a simple bash script, but it can get as complex as pulling in a Docker image, pulling in a machine learning model that you've trained, pulling in a Python script that you're using. It's super flexible. You can use our default image for the worker. You can specify your own Docker images, run all sorts of really powerful programs within this worker. And so I'll pull up the script here so we get a sense of what this algorithm looks like. It's super simple, just so that it's easy to track here in the demo. We're going to take in as input those records that we talked about, and then we're going to generate an output, which is the credit score. And the way we do it here in our super intelligent, super advanced credit scoring application is we calculate an average of your balance. And if your average balance in your bank account is over this value, we're going to assign you a credit score of 722. And if it's below the 1250 threshold, we're going to give you a credit score of 684.
This is how all credit score apps work, right? So
this is how the sausage is made. Yeah. All right. So like I said, we're going to use that bash script, and then actually kicking off the job with our SDK should be really simple. So we're going to take in that bash script. We're going to upload it as an input, a program, so we can use it. And then we're going to build out here our command line invocation of that script. And so we're going to say, we're going to use that bash script, and then we're going to pass into it as an input that records data set. And then we're going to say we're writing an output. And we configure this together here for the records data set, we're saying that we want to use that as an input for our job, and we're pulling that in from the chain. So here's the address of that data set we want to use as input. And then we're also specifying here that our job creates one output. and we're going to store that output at score.txt. And so behind the scenes, what's happening is our worker is going to create an empty file, and it's going to place that file within in this environment here so that the script can write their outputs to that file. And then when it's all said and done, the worker is going to come through and take that output and turn it into a new Parcel data set automatically for us. And we can specify some configurations around that output. Specifically here, what we're going to say is our end user is going to also be the owner of that output set. So to your point, right, full end-to-end ownership of data by our end users. We're going to take our use what's called the dispatcher. We're going to submit a request for the job, and then the dispatcher is going to let us know. It's going to find a worker, submit the job into that secure computing environment. It's going to wait, and the dispatcher is going to be the thing that tells us, hey, this job is completed. It has either succeeded or failed. And if it succeeds, which hopefully, knock on wood, it will, it'll create output data sets, and the dispatcher will let us know, hey, now you have these new data sets that are created by your job, and they live at these new addresses on the chain. So hopefully relatively straightforward, but also super flexible. So let's hop over here to the command line and let's run our job. So we're going to use our report script here. We're going to pass in, again, the user identity address that owned that piece of data. And then we're going to pass in that the address for that data set that we had previously uploaded. And that's our records data set, which has our bank records, the input for the job. And so I'm going to run this. And so what's happening behind the scenes is that I've used my TypeScript code over here to request the job. It's gone off to the dispatcher. The dispatcher has taken in our different request parameters, and then the dispatcher is going to then dispatch that job to an available worker. The worker will take in the input data sets into our secure computing environments, decrypt them within the secure environment, bring in our program, run our analysis, and then generate our output data set. It'll take that output file, turn it into a Parcel data set, and upload it to Parcel. At that point, it'll get encrypted, and only that encrypted piece of output, that output data set, will be the thing that leaves the secure computing environment. We've also specified that our end user is going to be the owner of that data set, so it will still belong to them. They'll hold the key set encrypted data set. So end to end, from beginning to end, from bank records to credit score, our user maintains full ownership of all of their data that's happened and generated through the Blockred app. And so on the left-hand side here.
Yeah, one thing I'll add too, what's really cool about this is, like, from an application developer standpoint, I don't have to necessarily take on as much risk of handling this sensitive data. I can build a system that essentially keeps it private or keeps it encrypted throughout every step of the flow. So it's a really neat way of not only providing better privacy to your customers, but also potentially helping protect yourself as you're building some apps.
Totally, yeah. We think there's incredible value for both sides, developers and their customers. And so the dispatcher here has told us that this job with this ID is completed successfully. It's created an output. And so if we hop back up here to Steward app as our end user, we should now actually see the output of that job as a new data set. So I'm going to kick off a download of that so we can check and see what our credit score is. And we should also be able to go over here to the data history tab. And if I refresh that, we should see here a log that Blockred Acme Co. used my bank record data to generate this credit scoring result. And then also I see, of course, a record here that I, as the end user, downloaded my record. So it's downloaded. Let me open that up here, and boom, we got a 722 credit score.
Nice credit score, Charlie.
I'm a diligent saver.
Yeah, this is very cool. I mean, it's a powerful flow because it gives the user kind of the total insight and total control of how their data is being used in a way that's really transparent. Of course, obviously, here the user's downloading this file, but with additional permissions and kind of the right setup, you could also surface this information within your own app so the user was able to consume it or view it there, that kind of thing.
Totally.
Cool, Charlie. So this is really exciting. It's cool to see Parcel in action. Where should folks go if they want to get started using Parcel? Like, what are the next steps? How should they get started?
Yeah, we hope folks see this and they're really excited and want to start building with Parcel. If you want to get building with Parcel, visit our website, oasislabs.com/Parcel SDK. There's a form there. Fill out the form with your info, and then we'll be in touch. We'll get you set up with our NPM package. We'll get you set up with our documentation, and we'll help you hit the ground running and start building with Parcel.
Yeah, we've got all those links in the comment section, so you can check them out down there, and we're excited to see what you all build. So talk to you soon.